Hello, folks, and welcome once again to another edition of River Chat. I'm Guy Motzinger, your host, and today we're going to have a chance to talk to a couple of our elected officials. First of all, we're going to get a chance to meet our Sheriff Lonnie Greco, and of course, as many of us as do know Sheriff Greco, we sat down and really went ahead and took a long time to get him to give us his observations on the state of the Sheriff's Department and where we may be seeing it go in the future. And as you must be aware by now, the Louisiana State Legislature finished its business. It's now done for the year, and we are going to have a chance to sit down with our representative, Chris Leopold, and see not only what his feelings were on the legislative session, but maybe how he might have been able to help Plaquemines Parish as well. In addition to that, well, you would expect that our guy Cody Juneau was down at the council meeting, and we'll take what time we have left to give you some quick highlights of that. So there's an interesting River Chat coming your way, folks, and it'll get going right after these words from the people that make River Chat possible, our sponsors.
As you know, when you shop Balestras, you're almost home. But did you know that they now have rotisserie chickens and they make their own fresh baked French bread daily? It's just another addition to one of the best meat departments in the metro area.
And the most important thing is the meat department. They got the best meat department in the state of Louisiana, and you're going to get fresh stuff cut right then for you.
Who needs a chef when there's a Balestras?
Back to River Chat, folks, and as promised, we have with us our sheriff.
Well, Mike LaFrance, who was the interim sheriff at the time, he hired me in December and come on board and start overseeing what's going on. Just at least to just get my feet in the door and start looking over, from finance to patrols, detectives, the whole entire makeup of the sheriff's department. And by doing so, I was able to go ahead and see, where the positives are, where the negatives are, and try to go ahead and correct these things. My first 3 months being here, what we did was analyze, especially with the finance. Finance drives everything. And that's what I guess a lot of citizens, some people realize that. A lot of people just think they can take the money quarterback, sit back in the chair and just say, I can do this, I can do that. Well, let me explain something to you. It's a lot more in detail than you think. And by doing just the cutting of the fat, taking that scissor and just going there and cut the fat off, in 3 months we cut about $3.5 million of the budget. It didn't even use mess up our service. Our service was still there, but just taking $3.5 million out of the budget just that quick. Miss Monica, who is my chief financial officer now, she said, Sheriff, you have done in just these 3 months. And I'm like, well, if we can do more. And by doing it, she goes, I'm talking about what you're going to see on the backside, because with a budget such as big as it's 14 for last year. And she says, you're going to see the ramifications in the next 6 months. And, so as we were approaching July 1, where I officially take office, they met their mandate to give us a zero balance on our stuff, but we wasn't going to have any money come around August. So I had to go to the Bonds Commission to see about going ahead and take a loan out against my anticipated revenue to make sure that I'll complete the rest of the year. I hired Mr. Hugh attorney, and we sat down, we did all our figures, and we figured that we got to borrow about $6.5 million against our anticipated revenue for the next year. And a little bit more was because of hurricane season was coming. We didn't know where we was going to be at. And a lot of citizens realized that I'd like to see it one day to where we have enough money put away on a rainy day fund that I never had to worry about screaming for FEMA. Because these deputies, when they work diligently out here for hurricanes, they deserve to get paid too. Their families. So we managed to go ahead and go through all we went through, and we borrowed the 6.5. It was granted to us. At first, it was kind of hesitant, but they didn't realize that I had cut $3.5 million out of the budget. And when Mr. Hugh Martin advised that to the the Senate president. Like, my Lord, I cannot believe, but it's somebody living with, and so and I didn't use my first dollar drawdown until November. That's how much that meant to make that $3.5 million cut. And I was so surprised when Miss Monica was talking to me. She said, Lonnie, I'm going to tell you, you didn't realize how much we've done. That's right. It starts with we. It ain't about me. We as a team, we're going to be the team from here on out, as long as I'm here. And this all encompassed between Hurricane Isaac and 4 spills, and managed it very well. We instituted the ICS for the first time. Incident command systems, where a hurricane or any kind of event takes place, that kicks in. We have a guy who is in total control, and we run the system. All the way from logistics to finance, the whole works. And it's all about putting deputies on the streets. Sure, we give the citizens all the help that they need, in their time of need. Documenting everything that we do, from time that you go out there to work your patrol, anything that we have to purchase. So everything was documented properly. When we gave it to FEMA, the gentleman was, I guess, so surprised to see how well documented it was that he said, this is acceptable, and we're going to go ahead and pay this fee. And I was very happy to see that we stayed in tune. Nobody was actually getting paid more than they should have. Everybody was locked down to a shift. Nobody worked more than they had to. We try not to overwork people. And by doing all of that, I was very shocked to see when Miss Monica told me. She said, Sheriff, after all these 4 spills and a hurricane, we are just starting to draw down from our anticipated revenue money that we had to go to the Bonds Commission for in November. And so out of the 6.5 that we borrowed, or let's say got a line of credit for, we only used 2.5. And we repaid that money back by February 15th in my incoming year.
Is that right? That's a story of fiscal greatness. Yeah, thank you, accountability that you don't ever hear in government. And you've also had this huge loss, I know, of income because, of course, Katrina took the prison down, and you're in the process, I think, of getting there finished with that prison, aren't you?
Yes, sir. When I came in, that was a project that was already in play. I inherited this. If it was up to me, it wouldn't have been as big as it was. It would have been something scaled down to 250, maybe at the max. But again, I didn't get this thing started. It was something that I inherited. And
now FEMA is paying for it, though. Am I right about that?
That's correct, 100%. They are actually just giving the sheriff's office back what they had. The only thing that has driven the price up was because of FEMA regulations. It had to be mitigated up in the air, 19 feet. So then, and everything had to come in being overbeefed because of FEMA rules and regs. And it's huge, it really is, and it's the state of the art. But we can sit here, we can call it the big white elephant all you want, or how much it's gonna cost to operate this, how much it's gonna cost to operate that. But the bottom line is, it's here. And we're gonna have to make a go at it, one way or the other. Since I've been in office now for the last 11 months, I have Mr. Ernest Wooten, who works for me in the legislature, is constantly up there in Baton Rouge. We are trying to work with the Secretary LeBlanc of the Department of Corrections. We are looking at trying to see what kind of inmates can we get. And the thing is, what you have to be careful of is, you want to make sure you don't get the worst of the worst, because those are the problems that we want to stay away from. And I would like to try to see about the reentry program, but there's a lot of things that's going on right now in state government that, as you know, they get cutbacks in prisons. I think my analogy, the way I feel about when it comes to a lot of your prisoners, is that, people say, oh, you lock them up, you throw away the key, we're spending money. Well, one thing you have to realize is, do you want to live with your criminals, or do you want to put your criminals away? Okay, and the thing is, I look at it from a law enforcement aspect. You wrong, you're wrong. You're right, I'll stand 100% behind you. And when I took office here, I made a pledge to say that I'm not playing politics when it comes to somebody who commits crimes. I spoke that at my very clearly when I had my inauguration down in Buras. Mothers and fathers need to learn tough love. And what I mean by that, that's not to try to say it in a negative way, but you have to have somebody hold accountable for their actions. Moms and dads work very hard all their life to build up what they call a retirement fund. If you keep going and saying you're bailing out your kids constantly, my kid didn't do any wrong, my son or my daughter, or whatever, sooner or later, you're going to be knocking at 70, 72, 75 years of age, and you want to retire, and that child is going to make a grave mistake, or whoever it is in your family. And when they're going to have to go to prison for the rest of their life, you think it costs just trying to get them out of a parish prison? See what it feels like to have your child go to a state penitentiary, and it's going to cost you everything you have ever worked for. Attorneys going to be there like sharks. They're going to want that money to try to get your kid out. They're going to tell you all the things you want to hear, but they cannot deliver because of his sentence. They're going to look at that rap sheet. All I can tell moms and dads is tough love is the hardest thing for you to do. But believe me, in the long run, it's going to save you, and it's going to save that child. Just recently, we had the 27-man drug bust in the parish. You know, you have some people say good points, and you have some critics say bad things. But I look at it this way. If the person that we apprehended is out here putting this poison to any one of our children, what has become of our children's future? It's a lost soul. Mm-hmm. So I'm very diligently right now working with my guys. I want the kingpin. I don't care who he is, and I don't care who they are or what they are. If they bringing that stuff down here, we are going to continue to be very proactive and be aggressive on getting that poison out of this parish, because I know it's, some people say, oh, Lonnie, you're just talking out the blue here, because there's no way you can get rid of drugs forever. You're right. You can't get rid of it 100%. But I can make sure I can be the flea on that dog that can make you scratch all day long. And the thing is, my guys put their life on the line every day. People just don't realize this poison it's actually ruining this country, not just this parish, but this country. And when you have things like that going around, you know, people say, oh, you arrest the little guys, and before you know it, he's going to be replaced by another guy. Yes, he will. But whoever's going to be replaced, I'm letting you know right now, we do have a prison that's coming online pretty soon. It's 871 beds. And all I can tell you is this. You want to commit a crime down here in Plaquemines? I'm not trying to say something to be sarcastic to anybody, but we have a beautiful parish. We have good people. And the good citizens of this parish deserve to have a good quality of life. And I'm going to make sure that I give it to them, whether it rubs the wrong way or the good way or the bad way. It doesn't matter to me. It gets to the point to where people have to sit there and think about politically how they're saying something politically correct, where it's popular or unpopular. I feel that there is no such place to sit there and put politics in law enforcement, because it's all about somebody's life or death. And there's just trivial things that's being done out there right now in our communities. We got over 52,000 cars that travel this parish a day. 52,000 that come through this parish in the morning. And in the afternoons, you can see the traffic we have. I got only so many guys on the street. And when people try to tend to say that, oh, a lot of you not using your money wisely, well, we're using it very wisely out here. We're making sure that we got people in place that the ranking officers that we have that are out on the street, they're not just lieutenants and sergeants just because they're wearing bars. They're working lieutenants and working sergeants, and I want them out there dealing with the public, taking reports, and mentoring to their patrol officers that are below them. I want our citizens to understand what the word service means. Service is just not something you get in a job and just saying, okay, I'm a deputy and I can go out here and enforce the laws, whoever breaks them. It's not about that. It's service to your community. This community means so much to us to begin with, and I hope that we mean just as much to them as they mean to us. They work hard every day. you know, as we approach now the hurricane season, you know, preparation for hurricanes, you got some people who are saying, oh man, here we are, we got these looters that y'all arrested the last hurricane season. Now these guys are back out on the street. Well, my job was done when we investigated it and we apprehended them. And I think a lot of citizens don't realize that the sheriff's office is not the one who lets people go once we arrest them. They have a right to bond. That is their right to bond if they can be bonded out. But that case is then presented to the district attorney's office and is set for trial, whatever that trial date is set. And if they're able to go ahead and get bonded out, then they'll be out in the public until that hearing date is set. And then whatever their conviction is going to be, then the judge sets it. But I think there's a misunderstanding somewhere in the community where they think that the sheriff's office is the one we arrest them, but then we turn around and let them go, and that's not the case.
It's, you know, it's the kind of thing where the sheriff's department is far and away the most visible of any public department in the parish. And if you've been hit by looting, and I know there's nothing that would make you any angrier than taking advantage of our people while we're suffering from a hurricane or something. It's hard to automatically say, oh, there's this whole judicial system that's in play, and the sheriff gets to A, and then, you know, all you can do is be prepared and can bring the right evidence at trial whenever it may come. And priorities are priorities, I know, for the DA as well. So that's going to put, people are innocent till proven guilty, but that doesn't mean there's some bad guys that get out on bond and can still cause you some trouble.
Right. And, you know, we have a great working relationship with Mr. Charlie Balley, the district attorney's office. He has advised us that since we've come on board, you know, the reports have been very well written, you know, so we can go ahead and get a prosecution on it. He's got a 97% conviction rate right now since we took office. Just about all the cases that we're dealing with right now with that office, he's just told me how it's wonderful to work with us, because we're constantly, like with my number 3, going over there, talking to him, and I have one of my lawyers going over there to make sure that anything and everything that's being done between the sheriff's office and DA is mirrored. We want to make sure that we understand why this report was done this way, or why this arrest was made that way, and whatever else he needs for evidence. We're going to make sure we do everything we can to apprehend someone who has committed a crime.
Well, listen, I've got a little bone of contention now. We're sitting here in this beautiful office that you've got here, but there wasn't any place to park. And we ended up, you know, 3 miles past where Jesus left his sandals. Not really. We didn't go that far, but understand you've taken, you took the step to acquire the Regions Bank building. And I don't think enough people know not only how smart an idea that was, but how that's going to manifest itself in getting you into the right properties that you need to really run your department. Tell us a little bit about that process, will you?
When I first come on the scene here, they brought me back to the Belchase State School, where they was wanting me to look at about 53,000 square foot of buildings for the sheriff's office for that complex. And it was trying to get me to spend several $1 million back there in the back, and I just didn't sit well with me, you know, and I knew nothing was going to get back in return for me. And I knew that those buildings were built way back in the days. So whether they were environmentally cleared or not for asbestos, I don't know. Some people can say they were, but I have a different opinion of that. And but I opted not to do that, because I had asked if it's possible, where are we with the Port Suffolk jail? And they said, well, they had taken that money out and at PW and brought it over here to Belchase for a new improved project. And I said, well, what are you waiting on? They said, well, we was waiting to see what answer you're going to give us. I said, well, if you're asking for an answer today, my answer is no. I'm not spending several millions or $10 million to come back here and then get nothing back in return. And it's not my obligation to actually provide myself with a building. That's the parish government's, obligation to do so. And But it's been prior to Katrina before we had an office, because, you're looking at the courthouse that burned prior to Katrina, and I'm just sitting out here and I'm looking at, and I make my assessments every day. Citizens see me, or even my employees see me walking around the complex, and sometimes they think that because I might have this kind of shrewd look on my face that, I'm probably upset or angry at something. It's not. My wheels are always spinning on how can I help generate revenue for this sheriff's department without putting it on the taxpayer's back. And then I'm very mindful in watching for everything that goes on, because I want to make sure that this department is run very efficient. And then I looked at these trailers and I'm going, this is crazy. Here we are years later, 9 years, and we still operating out of trailers. And so my attorney said, Regions Bank just recently came up for sale. Well, prior to that, I was looking at another building, which was the welfare office, which belonged to Mr. Wayne Giordano and Mr. Frank Patty. And when Isaac hit, it gave me a clear sign that I couldn't be on the ground. And we was so close. People don't realize in the Bellchase area how very close you was from you having to gut your homes out because of that East Bank. That East Bank levee that goes from St. Bernard line to White Ditch, which is very, I want to say,
completely inadequate, I'll say it.
It is inadequate to begin with, and it's very low. But what people don't realize is we don't have a base there wide enough to build a bigger levee. You need a big base to support a bigger levee. But with that being said, and is that we was probably about another couple of hours away from that East Bank over top in the Mississippi River levee coming to Bellchase. Then we would have all been either in some water, I don't know the exact depth, but the thing is, Isaac, for what they call the Category 1, man, we was in trouble. So I scrapped that idea with that building down there, and my attorney advised me, said, man, Regions Bank just got sold. I said, you kidding me? I said, I've never seen the sign. I just saw the sign said for lease. And he said, well, no, it's sold. So they had a partnership that had purchased the Regions Bank, and I told him, look, I need you to see about going, talk to this gentleman, find out who he is, and let's see if we can purchase the bank. That the sheriff's office is in dire need of a piece of property. And I need something that's going to have a second floor where I can put all my records at. You have to make sure you protect those records. And he said, okay. So he went to the guy. We offered him about $1 million. And he declined. And I told him, I said, go back and see if you can offer him $1.2 million and go up in increments until we get a baseline. And finally, at $2 million, he agreed. And so we heard and signed papers right there saying we will accept purchasing the Regions Bank for $2 million. And thank God I did that, because later that afternoon, a guy came in and offered him $2.6 million. And we knew the assessment was higher than that because we'd already checked with the assessor's office. And until doing that, I'm collecting $18,000 a month rent, because Regions Bank will stay on the bottom, Seco Financial will stay on their side, and between both of them, we're collecting $18,000 a month. And within 10 years, the bank is paid for. And I'm actually...
That's pretty slick. That's not talking you into going into the commercial real estate business, is it?
No, sir. No, sir. But the thing is, I'm going to be able to acquire 16,000 square foot upstairs on the second floor to put my administration and, my finance, my tax, some of my criminal records and civil department. In the rear, I got a 4,000 square foot building. And you're looking at about almost 3-point-something acres of property that I have right there. And the main thing is we will have some place to go, and some people just think that, oh, man, Lonnie didn't really know what he was doing at this point. Well, guess what? I've talked to a lot of business people, and they said, man, that was a pretty smart deal, because when you look at when we had that bond money that the sheriff had borrowed, I think at the time it was 12.6, something like that, and you're looking at about an interest rate of 1.25 or maybe a little less than that. Well, I'm making over 10% right now just leasing that thing out at $18,000 a month. So we did very well with our finances.
What's your schedule on starting to move in there?
Well, we done did the architecture and engineering process, and hopefully it's going to probably be by the end of this year, maybe November, December, before we get moved in. And, you're going to have some issues where you're trying to get some punch lists done to get it correctly. But the thing is, we want to make sure we do everything frugal. It's the taxpayers' money. And I was always brought up from way young was you make sure you take care of your finances. And that's how I've always been.
Well, gosh, you seem like you've covered a wide swath. I know in the past we've seen your deputies work with our kids. We've seen them at, of course, the Night Out Against Crime, and you see lots of parents and kids. I know the sheriff's department's been involved in cooperation with the district attorney to go in on some lessons that I think the 4th and 5th, y'all still doing that kind of thing. So you've still got that good reach out to everyone. Well, I'll tell you what, it's been fascinating, and there's so much going on in the sheriff's department that you really just don't realize how many balls have to get juggled to keep everything running correctly and running smart. And there's probably no one better than you in terms of crisis, hurricane, because you've been on both sides of the hurricane from an administrative point of view to make sure that we get, everything gets done as best from the sheriff's department point of view. What I'd like to see us do, and we're going to talk to the sheriff and see if we can't get him to allow us to maybe do some in-depth programming on the prison as it gets to completed. You're involved out there on the Mississippi River. You're involved in the public relations with the kids. You've just got so much stuff going on that I'd kind of like us. Wouldn't it be good if we all said, "Oh, wait a minute, that isn't a light turning on behind you giving you a ticket for going 5 miles over the speed limit." There's a lot going on and a lot that has to be done in order to keep it grabbed. So, any last words, Sheriff?
Well, like to let the citizens know is, we get a lot of complaints in our office. We do for speeding, and it's all in our neighborhoods. And I just want the citizens to really know this. You always want people to respect your neighborhood. But when I get the complaints and I go to send my deputies out there, guess who the ones that we're pulling over?
Everybody in the neighborhood, Sheriff, speed.
Everybody in the neighborhood who makes the complaints are the ones that we're catching. And all I'm going to ask the citizens of our parish is, look, this is your parish. You enjoy the fruits of this parish to begin with. To live here, the crime rate, is not bad at all. Yes, we have a lot of arrests that we have been making since I've been taking office. You see a lot in the newspapers. You see a lot on our Facebook and website pages. Is because I made my deal to say I will be transparent. I will make sure you know everything, so that way you know how to protect your kids and how to protect your property. So all I can tell you is this. All the cars that I told you a while ago, 52,000 that come down here every day, I want my deputies to be very aggressive. And I'm giving my deputies the opportunity to have discretion on who and what they do, okay, when they pull these people over. But the narcotics that comes through this parish is being trafficked, not only in the waterways, but on the highways. So when my guys are out there and they actually put their life on the line, that's why Mr. Charlie Ballet came out with these tent meters. Everybody thinks it's very trivial. Police cars are exempt. And it's not just police cars that we have that operate with the lights on top. These are like narcotics and all that stuff. These people are exempt from that law with the tent because we have sometimes witnesses that are in those cars that are actually pointing out some of these drug dealers who are committing these crimes. But when you take a walk up to a car as a patrol officer and it's pitch dark, you don't know if that person is pointing a gun at you. A lot of citizens just think that, oh man, Lonnie, this is very trivial. Well, I welcome any one of them to come ahead and ride right seat and allow them to walk up to that car and see how they feel in a pitch dark, lonely highway or a lonely street.
As a matter of fact, just as as a resident here. I've got a question. Of course, I tried to never get stopped, but inevitably it's going to happen, you know. But it seemed to me like you get stopped, you stay in your car. Then for a while, when you got stopped, you should get out of your car. Is there a standard policy on that? And if you get stopped by a police officer, sheriff's officer in Plaquemines Parish, what would you like for them, the person behind the wheel, to do? What's the best thing for them to do?
Well, the most important thing is the officer himself, how he guides his safety. It's actually the officer's discretion. Okay, and because he has to feel safe at what he does. Right. You know, and a lot of citizens don't realize that. Now, we try to be mindful, especially, you know, to some older senior citizens and all that stuff. We try to make sure that, look, we want to be respectful. I want my department to be very respectful. And if anybody is out there doing something that they don't need to be doing, I need to know. I don't want somebody to come to me and be a yes man. If there is some serious problems in this sheriff's office that I need to know, please don't hesitate to call my office, 297-5120. My secretary is Ms. Judy Burris. We'll be making sure that we handle everything accordingly. When citizens make complaints on our deputies, one of my policies that I put in place was that they're going to go see Internal Affairs Officer, that's Lieutenant Harris Farlow. And there's going to be a screen that they'll be able to see after it's all said and done with. But when people make complaints about deputies, they tend to think that, you know, I'm going to make a complaint on him because the deputy's got to do his job. But I'm hoping that the deputy has done his job professionally 100%. But that person has the right to make his complaint. But then he also has to go ahead and fill out a document. And on that document, he has to make sure that he's telling the truth on that document, on that affidavit. And then once he fills it all out, the Internal Affairs Office is going to advise him, you know, look, if you falsify this document and I push that button and that computer screen comes up, because all these cars have audio and video. Everything that you see on that traffic stop or in that home is being audioed. The deputy and the victim or the assailant, same thing with in front of the car with the video. Once we push it up there, and let's say that person gave a false statement about a deputy just to get back at him, well, then we're going to charge you accordingly for falsifying that document. And the reason I've done that is because if our people that make complaints on our deputies and I go over there and I'm trying to correct these officers, you're going to kill morale. And right now, my morale is high as it can be right now. These guys are gung-ho to want to do their jobs, but if you go knocking these guys constantly saying, stop doing this, you know, oh, he's politically connected to this. Many, many years y'all been hearing, oh, you can't touch this one, you can't touch that one. Oh, he's connected with this one, he's got money. I'm not playing these games. Everybody is on one level. We're going to make sure we treat everybody equally. Doesn't matter how much money you have, don't matter who you're politically connected to. We just want to make sure that everybody's being treated equally. So.
Well, my experience with the Sheriff's Department goes back as far as I've been here, about 14 years ago. And it's never been anything but professional and positive. And, you know, the one thing you can't take away from Plaqueminian sheriffs that you don't necessarily feel when you're somewhere, 99% of these guys, this is home. And they protect it like it's their home, and that's the way it should be. Sheriff, thank you very much for giving us this opportunity to talk to you. Hope you let us back here from time to time to get more insight on the Sheriff's Department.
Anytime you want, please come back. And like again, I'm offering that to the citizens. Anytime they want to come to my office, my door is open. Feel free to come. I'll be more than glad to talk to you.
You got it, Sheriff. Thank you very much. Well, from the Sheriff's Department, our first opportunity to get an in-depth interview with our new sheriff, Lonnie Greco, and there's more River Chat coming up, folks, but you knew that.
For over 20 years, Russo's Pharmacy, an independently owned full-service retail drugstore, has been committed to providing quality service to the residents of Plaquemines Parish. We're the right alternative to shopping at the big chain stores because here, you're not just a number, you're a neighbor. Our pharmacists are friendly, knowledgeable, and happy to take the time to answer any questions you may have about your medications. We accept most major insurance plans, including TRICARE, Medicaid, and Medicare Part D, and invite you to experience a level of personal service at Russo's you won't get anywhere else.
And welcome back to River Chat, folks. And also, as promised, I'm pleased to be here with our state representative in District 105, Chris Leopold. And Chris, you've just finished the legislative session for 2013, and there were some big issues that were in play. I know that you were working on specifically Plaquemines Parish behalf, and I'd like for you to address this whole issue of the MFP, and those are funds that are allocated to our school system, which has been a terrible source of contention for the school system. I know you've done work on that. But can you give me just a blush at your overall impression of the session and what you felt like were maybe 3 or 4 of the highlights?
First of all, there's no special session because there was a time during the session that might have been possible, but fortunately everyone was able to work out the differences with the budget, and we finished on time and met the deadline by about an hour. And so there'll be no special session, nor will there be any additional cost to fund the special session. And
anytime we keep politicians from being in attendance, they won't be figured out a way to mess things up.
I'm learning that. You're right. But in addition to the MFP issue, there were some other issues that were relative to Plaquemines Parish. One of them being the HB 608, which appropriated the funds for a settlement that the Plaquemines Parish School Board had against the state. And there was no settlement section of the budget when it was brought to us by the administration, nor was there one when it left the House. But because of the representation we have in the Senate, particularly Senator Heitmeyer and Senator Alario, we were able to get the settlement line back in on the Senate side and got it through. So Plaquemines is going to be paid, the school board, for the settlement somewhere between $3.5 and $4 million that they had in the state. And this was, I would have never thought this would have happened at the beginning of the session because of all the numbers games with the budget, but we were able to get that done.
That's going to be fantastic for them. And, you know, as people may not know, the state will be found liable for these things, or any government. And then when they get around to paying you,
right,
becomes an entirely different issue. So that you guys were able to actually get that money away from the state of government and to Plaquemines school system. Great, man. Good. What else was going on?
Well, I also had a bill, House Bill 351, that requires highly traveled bridges to receive certain treatment within the highway priority system. And what brought that on was at the sunset of the tolls on the Crescent City Connection, we're going to be competing now for regular maintenance dollars like everywhere else in the state. And I always pondered why we don't consider heavily, or more than we have in the past, the usage of a structure and the regular maintenance dollars for that structure. I mean, if more people are using it, then we should have more maintenance dollars flowing to it. We were able to get that all through. That's sitting on the governor's desk as well.
That's fantastic. And you'd have to think that would, if it could get itself integrated into the transportation department's budget, what sort of benefits would you anticipate?
What people don't realize is there's a tremendous amount of discretion during the year, particularly when we're out of session, as to how money is spent. The DOTD has a priority program that they use at their discretion on how to spend money. So the more we can do in reminding them legally and through legislation about the importance of structures and the discretion that's used throughout the year, the better. So that's what we were able to accomplish as it relates.
What a great idea. Thank you for that, for sure.
And then we also had House Bill 236, which increases significantly penalties for the taking of oysters in closed areas, which we still have some closed areas as a result of the BP oil spill. Bay Jimmy area particularly, that we're working very hard on trying to get open because the oysters are absolutely wonderful right now. And I've had some oyster fishermen who I've met with that really want to go back to work and harvest, but there's some not a clear path forward in terms of how much oil is there and how much oil is not. But you still have people who will go take the oysters that they have no right to. So we've stiffened the penalty to do that significantly.
Is Bayou Jimmy? I'm not familiar with the location. Is it on the east side of the Mississippi River, or do you know offhand?
It's Bay Jimmy. It's on the west side of the Mississippi River. And we're working, there's 2 or 3 agencies charged with determining the quality, and we're trying to get them all on the same page. But in the interim, this bill will discourage people from taking them that shouldn't.
You know, I was out on the water this last weekend, and I heard from a couple of different oystermen that the freshwater diversion over to the east bank is really causing them problems with the oyster fishing over there. I guess we're getting away from the legislative issues, but have you been hearing anything about that?
I have. You're going to be hearing about it more, but it's going to be the master plan and the diversion part of it, and its ill effects on the oyster fishing industry, and not only the oyster fishing industry, but in opposing the sediment freshwater diversions, the whole industry together, from what I can tell, is united in trying to discourage the magnitude of the diversions that are in the master plan now.
Well, that's a subject for a different day, and I must say I've got my own ideas about freshwater diversion and the efficacy therein. But let's move to what probably you've just told us the good news at $3.5–4 million. That's real money that the school board will get from their lawsuit. This MFP, can you just back us up and tell us what is MFP so the people that aren't familiar with it understand?
MFP stands for the Minimum Foundation Program, and it's basically the formula that is used to fund local school districts. And the Bessie Board actually sets the formula. The legislature either approves or disapproves it through resolution. Last year, and I've had some history with the MFP prior to being elected in terms of studying it, I voted against the administration in accepting the MFP, and we were defeated 51-49. It was very, very contentious and heated. I think you had some of that on your program.
And you were caused to do that because of the unfair way in which Plaquemines Parish is judged in that formula.
Correct. And at that time on your show last year, and I went back and watched it, I knew, and I said I knew, but I mean, I had every reason to believe, because it had the force of law, that a 53 vote, which is a majority of the 105 members, not a majority of those present, which is protocol, was needed. And the ruling from the chair when I voted, or when we voted, was that it only took 51. But the courts ruled in our favor, and the vote was thrown out. So the good news is that we revert back to the 2011-2012 formula, which doesn't fund the Type 2 legacy charter on the airbase. So the school system will realize a gain of right over $1 million because our MFP, we won't be paying for the charter, Type 2 legacy charter on the airbase. And not only were we able to do that, we were able to go in and put in next year's MFP, which starts in July, a 2.5% increase, which hasn't been done, I think, in the last 5 years. So that's going to be another windfall for all the districts. And I think in Plaquemines, it's going to be several $100,000. So if you couple the settlement, the reverting back to the 11-12 formula, and the 2.5% increase for next year, you're looking at between $5 and $6 million. So that's really, and the school district here is going to spend it well. I think we went from the 5th best district to the 4th best district in the state, and they deserve it, and they never should have been penalized in the first place. And I've been asked, is the 2.5% increase going to be permanent? And legally, it's not. We were only able to do it for 1 more year, but I can tell you the talk's going on now to make it permanent, and because we have, it kind of sets the trend for the future.
Let me ask you, this is, for you to have become elected as our state representative is, of course, your, first time and all. What's your impression about politics in Louisiana, and how has it, your personality fit with, what's got to be, some tough things that have to happen up there.
It's encouraging because, and I tell people this all the time, because recently there was a bill passed in Congress that you're familiar with, the Beer Goods Water Act, and the bill was,
Right. Yeah.
but
800 pages.
but the two things we have in Louisiana that I think help us not or lessen the possibility of doing that is the balanced budget amendment. We have to have a balanced budget. But secondly, a bill can only have one object. So it's very hard to, you can do it if it's relative to the object of a bill, but you can't throw something in that's not object to the bill. So it lessens the chances of that happening. But even bigger than that is in Louisiana, particularly this year in the legislature, I couldn't be more proud of being part of a group that reached across party lines, racial lines, if you will, with the other members of the Black Caucus and people from all over the state really work together. Louisiana is a neat place, and that's one of the benefits of this job is meeting the people from all the crooks and crannies around the state. There's a lot of interesting people from interesting areas, and there's a genuine good spirit and will with the people that I've met so far.
Okay, well, I tell you what, it's been, of course, you're bringing us all the good news. Was there a downside that you wished you could have avoided, or the legislature could have changed in this, or anything you think we need to look out for, or possibly maybe lobby on during this, while y'all are out of session?
I think if the economy, I think is going to get better from the studies I've read and from what I'm hearing. We need an uptick in the economy so the collections can increase. I'm hoping that some of the bits and pieces that we were able to get from the governor's package that he parked as it relates to state income tax and corporate income tax, there's some good parts of that we need to look at in the future. And as it relates to business exemptions, that was a hot topic this year. We need to monitor exemptions better than what we do. There's exemptions out there that I'm not convinced the state keeps track of once they're granted, to differentiate those that are successful, those that follow the law, and those that don't. So we need to get better on that. And we have a health care challenge in this state. And the Affordable Care Act is the law of the land. I don't think everyone understands it quite fully, including myself. That was something the state refused to accept. And at the end of the day, we're still going to have people that need to be cared for. So we're going to have to figure out how to do that best.
Okay, well, I tell you what, can't thank you enough for spending some time with us here on River Chat, and hope we can pick your brain and on other issues as they come up around here throughout the rest of the year. Any last words for the voters out there?
We have an open door policy with my office. If you need something relative to my role as a state representative or any role, just give us a call and we'll be happy to help you. And while I have you there, we were able to get on the last year's project of raising the road on Highway 23. We were able to get the last $2 million shifted from Priority 5 to Priority 2, and that project, the raising of Highway 23, is starting Thursday. They're going to redivert the traffic and start that project. It's going to be a 7-mile stretch, and we were able to get that going. So I'm really.
Is that south of La Recite, or where is that?
It's south of La Recite, not far south of La Recite, but it's right below the Conoco Refinery at Ravina Road, right there by Ben Becknell's residence, and that's where the project's going to begin.
Now, will that run all the way to where we have that? We have sort of that little construction or facility the parish has got on the right-hand side of the road and down.
It won't go quite that far. You're referring to Jefferson Lake. It's a 7-mile stretch, and I went and drove it the other day, that takes you into probably the beginning of the Point Celeste area, but not through Point Celeste. And you can tell by looking at the road. And, of course, north of that whole area is being overlaid on both sides of 23 from the Philisac down to where this project begins. So we're real excited about that, and we think it'll be good for business.
Great. Thanks for squeezing every penny you can in a responsible way out of there. All right, folks. More River Chat. We'll have to go find out what Cody's been taping before we can let this show go to bed, and we'll address that very issue. when RiverChat comes back. Hello, folks. It's springtime, and here at John Fro's Hardware, we got everything you're going to want, whether you need to be on aisle 1 or way over on aisle 25, whether you're cooking, fishing, planting, growing grass. It doesn't make a bit of difference. Your first stop 7 days a week is John Fro's Hardware. Welcome back to River Chat, folks. The Thursday meeting of the Plaquemines Parish Council was held in Belle Chase this time. Saved me a 60-mile trip charge, so thank you very much. I'm sorry for your loss, Cody. But before we go over to the last few minutes of this show and you can see highlights of the council meeting, let me just add a couple of things that we didn't get into Chris's interview. One is that, you know, annually we have the Plaquemines Parish Day. Last year, the food didn't even come from the parish, and Kurt Lapine, our councilman, District 3, took the bull by the horns along with others and brought a fantastic spread out there, and by Representative Leopold's standards, he said it was a huge success. And then the other thing, which is important, is that 7-mile extension raising of Highway 23, that's an $11 million project the state's about to enter into, and it was expedited because your Plaquemines Parish Council had the foresight to put up $1 million in order to get that project elevated to the point where we can expect action on it, as Chris said, this year. All right, so now off to the Plaquemines Parish regular council meeting as it was held last Thursday in Belle Chase.
I'd like to move to item 7D. I'm going to get you out as quick as I can, I promise. Which is explanation discussion of destroying the buildings in the East Bank Parish owned property formerly known as the Giordano property. Without making this a big public fight, I just would like to get a final answer. Mr. Nungesser, just if you could answer for me. You had no advance knowledge of this fire whatsoever? You did not authorize this fire. Let me ask this question now. It's finally looked like it's resting on Mr. Puckett's shoulders. What are we going to do about that? I know if you came and worked for me and destroyed $300,000 or $400,000 worth of property without authorization, the least you'd do is be gone.
Now, I'm trying to clarify what Mr. Nungesser said probably was a miscommunication on our 3 part. Well, the only conversation I had with anybody was Mr. Plunkett, and there was no miscommunication with what he told me. I asked him a question, and he gave me an answer to Mr. Scott on the telephone conversation. I never talked to Mr. Scott, so there was no communication between Mr. Scott and I. So I just want to clarify that. You know, there was no miscommunication. What was said, and I understood that.
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Puckett, go ahead.
I don't know why the microphone's not working. As a point of clarification from what Mr. Griffin said, he said he didn't talk to Mr. Lott, but he did talk to Mr. Lott because there was a conference call from his office to Mr. Lott that Mr. Griffin asked me to make. So recall that.
Can you tell me why you would even be involved in this in the first place as grant administrator? What this has to do with grants, burning buildings down?
I was asked a question. I responded to the question just the same as I would give that respect to anyone that asked me that question, any council member that would ask me a question. I would do my best to respond to that question.
I've got an email string right here I'm going to read into the record. It says, Scott or Guy, is there a project in place to demo the old buildings on the old Joe Brown property? Councilman Griffin is asking that they be demoed as soon as possible, and I'm not sure if they've been included on any demo list or if there's a plan in place. Thanks, Benny Puckett. This is sent from iPhone, from Scott Lott. I do not know about it being on any list, but we can do it in-house if requested to do so. Yes, please put them on you list and let me know a time frame. Thanks, Benny Puckett. And finally, Scott, let me know when you or one of your guys want to meet on site for verification. Please advise Byron DPS. And it says here, please, can you please let us know what building you want demoed? I'm just curious to why the grant administrator is deciding which buildings and giving authorization and what power you have to burn buildings or demo anything.
That was my communication to let you know what buildings to demo. That was not from me.
Scott, do you have the authorization to do this? Do you have the power to burn buildings or take down buildings on your own?
I said once before, and I'll say it again. The phone call, demo in buildings. My question was, materials. To bring the materials from the East Bank to the West Bank and pay for disposals. My suggestion was then, if we're going to demo the buildings and have to pay for the disposal, why wouldn't we do a practice with the fire department and burn them? Spoke to Mr. Puckett about it, and if I'm not mistaken, we talked to Mr. P.V. Griffin about it. So a few days went by, received another phone call from Mr. Puckett. Mr. Puckett was at Mr. P.V. Griffin's office with him on a speakerphone, wanted to know the status and when would we be able to get to it. Told him I did not know. I would have to call Mr. Roy Robichaux. And if Mr. Griffin knows Mr. Roy Robichaux, he would know Mr. Roy Robichaux is a fire chief. So I told him I don't know. I have to call Mr. Roy. He's out of town. Called Mr. Roy. Mr. Roy didn't know. He'd had to call his chief on the East Bank. Got in touch with him. He called me back. Told me, I think that day was a Monday. Told me that he'd have it be down by Thursday. Called Mr. Puckett back up. Told him they'll be down by Thursday. So if Mr. P.V. Griffin saying that he did not know that they were going to be demoed, or if he does not know who Mr. Roy Robichaux would be, and knowing that he's the fire chief, then
Let me just ask this, Scott. I know I'm splitting hairs, and maybe Mr. Griffin should know who Roy Robichaux is and what he does. Did you specifically tell him or ask him that you were going to burn the buildings? Yes or no?
I don't recall
I
one
would
way or
take it
the
as
other.
a no.
I don't recall one way or the other.
Okay. Did you have any advanced knowledge of the fire whatsoever? Or have any knowledge, or did you instruct anybody to set a fire?
No, I did. When I found out about the fire, Reverend Edwards called me that evening about 1:30 and
After the
told me
fact.
that the building was on fire.
Okay.
And I asked my question, what building? He said the Giordano property. If I hadn't received a phone call from Reverend Tyrone Edwards that day, I never would have knew the building was being burned until I passed that site later that evening.
Mr. Lott, I got one question for you so we can summarize this and go move on to the next thing.
Yes, sir.
You got instruction from Benny Puckett, and you correct?
When you say instructions as,
Did you take it upon yourself to do this?
no, sir.
You got instruction from,
I got the request
request from,
from Mr. Puckett, as you see the emails.
I did not give that order to Mr. Lott.
I have been an East Bank resident my whole life. Joe Brown's property was very dear and sacred. The authorization to burn it was absolutely absurd. Mr. Nungesser, if it wasn't any monetary value, why'd you pay so much for it? That is my question.
The council approved buying their property. I didn't pay anything.
you sure didn't veto it.
Folks, I want to thank you for watching River Chat. It means a lot to us, and if you have a chance to say thank you to our sponsors when you get a chance to see them, I appreciate it if you do it. Let them know programs like this and others that we do are good for the parish and you enjoy watching them, or get rid of Guy, whichever it needs to be. Good night, folks.